All right, I see we are live now. So we should be live on Facebook, which I will make sure to watch any comments and stuff there, questions there once we get to the Q&A, Liz. So to start out, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you guys can see this. Let's see. There we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. You see that okay, Liz?
There we go. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so hopefully this will work because last on Tuesday it wasn't working for me. So, so to start out with, my name is Nikki Cabus. I'm the VP of Development with Tech Hub South Florida, and our speaker today is Liz Armbruester? Is that
Armbuster, yes.
Armbruester, good. SVP of Global Compliance at Avalara. She's going to be talking about the trends and challenges of tax compliance in Florida. And again, for anybody that is not familiar with our events, we actually do have these lunch and learns every Friday from 12 to 1. So at Tech Hub South Florida, our mission statement is building South Florida into a tech hub. And our community creed, Tech Hub South Florida is wholeheartedly committed to building a welcoming, collaborative, and inclusive community for all. We put inclusivity first, engage with others, and are considerate to all, and don't sell to people. A little bit about our membership. We're actually a tech nonprofit, 501c6, member-driven association, and we have over 200 corporate members and, of course, thousands of talented professionals from Miami all the way through Palm Beach County, and actually some even now in Martin County. And a little bit here, I think, there we go. The next slide is on some of our members. These, again, are some of our top tier members. Jupiter Medical Center, Crown Castle, 2 Ton, Cloud Adhesive, Brick, Boca Code, which we happen to be sitting in today, Office Depot. So you can see you've got quite a few of them there. I'm sure if you're in South Florida, you probably recognize some of these names. A little bit about our membership. We do have weekly newsletters that go out every Monday. We offer different customized profiles, speaking opportunities, different collaborative events with partners in the region. Member exclusive discounts. There's a bunch of different things that we do offer, but if anybody's interested more in our corporate memberships or even individual, please feel free to reach out. I will, once I'm done with this, drop my email in the chat, or Monica, she's our member inclusion specialist. You guys happy to reach out to her as well. Again, a little bit about our events. We do have on average about at least 4 to 5 events a week, including our peer groups, but the main ones are Tech Talks, which are weekly on Monday nights. Our community coffees, which are our panel discussions, we do alternating Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m. We've got podcasts with business, tech, and startup professionals alternating with our community coffees, also Tuesday at 8 a.m. And then our lunch and learns, again, are weekly on Fridays at noon. For anybody that is currently looking for a job opportunity, we do have a job board on our website. But if anybody doesn't find a specific opportunity there that they may be interested in, you can actually go to our resume distributor and just upload your resume, and they get sent to all of our members all at once. So that's a really good way for anybody that's looking for a job, wants to get their resume out there, or anybody that's even looking for internships to put your resume in front of a bunch of our members and corporate companies. And I have one more screen, but of course, like Tuesday, at least it let me got through most of it, but it's not letting me go to the last one. We do have our Slack channel, very busy Slack channel. We'll make sure to drop that in the chat here for anybody that's not on Slack with us, because it's not letting me show that for some reason, but I will make sure to drop that in chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then Liz, this is your time to take it away. So please feel free to share your screen whenever you're ready.
Fantastic. And let me know when you guys can see slides.
There we go. Yep, perfect.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. And Nikki, thank you for hosting me to talk a little bit more about the trends and challenges of tax compliance. As Nikki said, I am Liz Armbruester. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Compliance at Avalara. And a little bit about me. I spend most of my days thinking about tax and actually how to make it easier for businesses like yours to be tax compliant. And you might think, oh my God, she's got to be joking. But in fact, it really is true. I actually appreciate the complexity of the tax problem and really the ever changing nature of the industry as a whole. And of course, I enjoy tackling tough problems with really smart people. I recognize that tax might not be your favorite topic. So we're going to keep this session informative but light, kind of walking that line between arming you with facts you need to know versus having that in-depth tax symposium that nobody wants to do on a Friday afternoon. At Avalara, we help companies of all sizes, from the one-person startup shop all the way up to global enterprises, navigate the world of their tax compliance obligations. And all businesses have their own set of unique needs. And in particular, in this time of a lot of turbulence, businesses need technology to make the complex simple so that they can focus on tasks that help them operate and grow. And here at Avalara, I've spent the last 7 years really doing just that, building a scalable platform that enables ease and efficiency and accuracy for thousands of businesses to file over 3 million returns to tax authorities annually all over the globe. And we're constantly thinking about how do we leverage new technology while keeping pace with the ever-changing world of tax regulation. So that's a little bit about me. And I would ask you guys, are you really ready for this? It's Friday afternoon. We're going to talk tax and get right into it. Here is our agenda for the day. We're going to kick off spending just a quick minute talking about the impact of COVID-19 and how it relates to tax. Second, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of sales tax and really arm you with the basics and talk some specifics about Florida. If you don't already know, tax is complex, and I'm going to probably say that more than 5 or 6 times today. But as we know, problems are tough to digest, and if you can't think about how to solve them, it really makes it just a tough program. So I love to be able to talk about the complexity of tax, but also give you some answers and some solutions. So we're going to focus a little bit on automation and how technology can help combat that complexity. I like to think about automation, if you will, as the dessert. It's kind of what you eat after you have to digest those tax vegetables. So we've also got a fantastic event upcoming at Avalara I want to talk to you all about. It's coming up in May. It's called Crush. I'm going to share what it is and why you should consider attending. And then, of course, we'll wrap up by tackling any questions you might have for me. So please be thinking about those along the way. Send them in, and happy to jump on them toward the end. There are 2 constants in life, death and taxes, and we'll solve death before we solve taxes. I don't know, solving death before taxes, perhaps it's a true statement. Our CEO, Scott McFarlane, has said this so many times, probably too numerous to count. But what we do know is that taxes are not going away anytime soon. However, we know that we can make them less painful to deal with. And through automating the complex, the mundane, the ever persistent and repetitive obligations of tax, we can certainly make it a lot easier. So a little bit on COVID. So COVID, of course, has impacted all of us. Some ways are common, some ways are not. But any way you look at it, this has been, more than a year of change. I heard a phrase kind of early on that really hit home for me. The phrase was, we're all in the same storm in this pandemic, but in different boats. Maybe some, on a nice river cruiser, some on a 2-oar paddle boat, but most of us being somewhere in between. And regardless of how you might be navigating this, the impacts as we think about a global economy are definitely evident, and is in particular here in the US. We know that as humans, we raced to adopt e-commerce. I'm sure many of you, are squarely in the middle of that. And we did so as a result of necessity, right? Without the ability to access your local market, your favorite hometown store, your big box store, our options were really limited. So in order to get access to the necessities, we had to adopt, right, to our environment. And this meant that businesses who were not already selling online, or maybe even through the marketplace, either made necessary modifications, or they unfortunately suffered significant losses in their business, if not even a shutdown. And studies have shown that this pandemic has rapidly accelerated the pace of e-commerce. There is data out there all over the place talking about that. And of course, as consumers, we certainly feel it. But here are just a couple of quick stats that I wanted to run past you just to give you a sense of what this really looks like. By 2023, estimating that e-com sales will have jumped from 16% at the beginning of 2020 to a net of 23% of total retail sales. course, as we've said, 93% of online consumers have shopped already on a marketplace and continue to do so. Going back into Q3 of 20, nearly 1 out of every $5 spent came from an order placed online. And just some astronomical numbers about where the B2B marketplace sales worldwide could reach. $3.6 trillion by 2024, up from 680 billion in 2018. And then the global B2C marketplace sales, 3.5 trillion by 2024, and that's up from 1.1 trillion in 18. So any way you want to look at it, COVID was a significant catalyst for consumer behavior. That doesn't happen every year. And really what we saw were years of consumer behavior change just in the course of months that are now, of course, trending to become much more of something that looks like it's here to stay. And that digital first approach for a lot of consumers, definitely here, at least until the next big shift. So what do businesses need to know about sales tax, and what does COVID really have to do with all of that? Well, I would start by telling you that sales tax is the primary source of revenue for 27 states across the US. 45 having sales and use, 45 of the 50 having a sales and use tax. And that means, of course, that states take sales tax compliance very seriously. And what I want to share with you is, again, I mentioned complexity. Where does it start? Well, the complexity really starts at the state level. States, of course, govern their own sales tax rates and rules, and often they vary widely from state to state. So getting on board with any channel, e-commerce, omni-channel sales, it of course requires much more than just setting up a website or connecting to buyers through your favorite marketplace. Just like if you were to sell from a storefront, you have to be aware of the indirect tax obligations. Otherwise, of course, you risk unexpected payments, penalties, et cetera. And especially in the world of e-commerce we're operating in today, things get really complicated really quickly. Tax content, of course, at the state level can be tough to manage, but then you've also got counties, cities, and special taxing jurisdictions to contend with, and they treat taxability differently. So in our quick little example here, I just offer up to you, in New York, tacos, burritos, common items, very similar. Tacos are taxable, burritos are not. There are places where if you eat in, the food is taxable, but if you take that same food and you take it to go, food is not taxable, but if you take it to go, it is. You know, if you're a fan of Twix in the state of Ohio, or a fan of, I think it's Reese's, one's taxable, one's not, and you're in the same location, really about what goes into that particular product to make it taxable. But suffice it to say, there are things you need to know to help you navigate the complexities of indirect tax. And I've broken them down into 6 categories. I know 6 kind of breaks the rule of 3, but maybe think of it as 2 lists of 3. So we're going to dive into those now. There are, of course, as I said, a number of challenges, but chief among those is the fact that when you consider the basics of tax rates and tax rules, they are in a constant state of flux. They're changing across states. So even if you're just operating, you know, within one state, taxability and tax rates can vary based on the particular county, the city, the special taxing jurisdiction where your consumer may reside. And that makes it really difficult to keep pace and remain compliant. It's also a challenge as I think about it from a business perspective, because while keeping up with all of that is tough, it's an activity. Tax compliance is an activity that provides no value to the business's bottom line. So, you know, to make matters worse, not adding value, you've got complexity in rates, rules, and boundaries. And then COVID-19 on top of it has shifted a lot of those rules and regulations, some permanent, some temporary, to add to that ever-changing nature of tax. So rates, rules, boundaries all add up to challenges when you're trying to get the correct application of tax to your product at the point of sale. And a lot of platforms offer tax rate tables. Tax rate tables are a great start, but it's not really enough to deliver accurate tax calculations. And here's why. Rate tables are just that. They're a rate table. They don't offer taxability rules, which can vary according to the SKU or the location. Again, think back to that taco burrito example in New York. Other people like to use zip codes, and here's why zip codes don't cut the mustard. They don't always align to taxing jurisdictions. You think they might, but they actually don't. There are hundreds of examples where two homes, for example, located on the same street directly across from one another, maybe even right next to each other, don't have the same tax rate, even though they're in the same zip code. And that's because, again, county, city, special taxing boundaries don't always follow those same boundaries as zip codes. So while those really close neighbors might be buying the same product, they might very well experience different tax rates. So, excuse me, in order to get it right, you really need that rooftop accuracy that will give you the latitude, longitude, and that enables the precise location mapping to those STJs, state, county, city, special taxing jurisdiction. And just to drop a hint, automation really helps here when you're into that level of complexity. So moving on from tax tables, second category of things you need to know about: product taxability. Many sellers run into complexity in accurately calculating the tax to be applied to a sale, and here's why. They fail to understand how or if tax should be applied at all. So for example, is the product or the buyer exempt? Are the rules the same no matter where they sell? Does the seller understand taxability on shipping and handling, especially now in the world of e-commerce? That's become a really big deal. Taxability for drop shipping oftentimes is not done correctly. Perhaps exempt sales are not handled correctly, maybe taxing when tax shouldn't be applied, or not applying tax when it should be. And one other area, when you think about taxability, as a growing business, oftentimes businesses are adding new products. So you've got to think about what is the taxability of that new product everywhere you're selling it, and to whom you may be selling to. So again, it's a bit of a multiplier on complexity. The where you are selling element of tax is my third kind of must-know category. And thanks to the 2018 Supreme Court decision, South Dakota v. Wayfair, selling across state lines has become a bit more complicated when it comes to being tax compliant. And for just a brief moment, I'm also going to talk about international sales, because so many sellers today are now exploring cross-border sales because they can. They have an opportunity via e-commerce, marketplace, et cetera, to find customers anywhere in the globe. And that just breeds a whole nother level of complexity, including item classification, calculation of duties and tariffs. And if you don't get it right, you risk your customer having surprise amounts potentially due on receipt, or maybe never even receiving the products at all. So to help you navigate this tax complexity, Avalara has some free sales tax risk assessment tools that can help your business understand where you might have some obligations. They're free and they're online at avalara.com. So if we dig in for a moment and we explore this Wayfair case, South Dakota v. Wayfair 2018, a bit more, it's really easy to understand the impact it has on sellers everywhere and that they may not be aware of. In fact, we commissioned a study in June of 2020, and actually we did it again subsequently, but the bottom line is we found out nearly half of businesses surveyed weren't even aware that Wayfair laws existed. But before we go there, I just want to quickly define a term because it really matters in the world of Wayfair and economic nexus. The word is nexus. In the world of tax, nexus means that relationship or connection that a seller has with a state, and it requires the seller to then register, collect, and remit tax in that state. And until the Wayfair decision happened, really, if I simplify it down, having a physical presence in the state was the leading business activity that created that relationship between a seller and a state. And physical presence, of course, could include renting or owning property. It could also mean employing remote workers, storing property in a fulfillment center, which comes into place in marketplaces. Things like advertising, drop shipping, receiving referrals from an in-state business. They're all activities that can trigger sales tax nexus, but oftentimes most people think about it from a physical presence. But that ruling, as I said, in South Dakota v. Wayfair, allowed states, as they created legislation, to base a sales tax collection obligation on the number of sales or transaction volumes, even if the seller has no physical nexus in that state. And that sales-based nexus is what we refer to as economic nexus. It's not an or statement. It's you could have physical or you can have economic, or you can have both. But here's a view of the number of states that had economic laws pre-Wayfair, obviously very few. And here's the picture today, quite different. 43 of the 45 states with a sales tax now have economic nexus laws. And you might notice Florida is one of those holdout states, but perhaps not for long. There is legislation, Senate Bill 50, I think is the number on it, that has just passed the Senate on the 25th of March and is now pending the House. And that will impact the seller law as we think about, and I'll get into thresholds and explain to y'all what that means, but also marketplaces. So if we take a peek at the complexity that's introduced by this economic nexus, you can really understand how costly it might be to manage. And the point I want all of you to understand and take away is that while we have this concept of economic nexus, the fact is that just like tax rates, taxability, et cetera, all the states like to do it differently. And what works for one doesn't necessarily work for others. Some states, for example, have a threshold for triggering economic nexus, while other states like Kansas, although it might be changing, deem all remote sales to be taxable. Kansas is definitely the exception. Most states do have a threshold, but it's how they utilize that threshold that can really be confusing. Some states have a combination where they say it's total sales and transaction volumes. Connecticut is an example of that, while Georgia offers an or scenario. So economic nexus, for example, is triggered when a business reaches $100,000 in gross sales, or it has 200 or more retail sales into the state. So as a business, you have to know those thresholds. You have to know how quickly you're approaching them. And then, of course, you've got to know if you surpass them. And now it's an obligation for you to be tax compliant. You got to go get registered and then collect and remit that tax. And as I said, right, Florida's a holdout. The Senate Bill 50 that currently is going through the process contains a $100,000 sale threshold. And so that would be, again, imposed upon taxable remote sales. And it's based off of the prior calendar year. That same bill, as I briefly mentioned before, would also impose a collection requirement on marketplace facilitators. And it also imposes the same threshold requirement on a marketplace facilitator as a remote seller. So if I break that down for a second, really what it means for a business is if a business has a brick and mortar location, or they're selling via an e-com platform, for example, let's exclude marketplace for a minute, you've got to pay attention. So first of all, have I established Nexus? Physical, yes, maybe. If you don't have a physical presence in Florida and this law passes, I have to pay attention to what my sales volume is in the state. If I only have an e-com site that I'm selling through that I manage, probably relatively easy to be able to track that. But if I'm also selling on a marketplace, and again, the law goes through as it's written, those sales that happen through that marketplace also count toward your obligation. And you've got to track that, even though the marketplace is responsible for collecting and remitting on your behalf. So it's a lot to manage, a lot to keep track of. And if you multiply that out times 44, we'll see if Missouri goes through. But if Florida gets added, it'd be 44 states. So where you sell in Florida or cross-border to other states, or then also internationally, can be a lot to manage. All right, we're going to talk for just 2 quick seconds, again, on that international footprint. So, if it wasn't enough to manage what's happening in the US, of course, in the UK, we've got Brexit. I know that as for international sellers, that's a very common sell-through point. There's a lot of changes happening there for you to be aware of. As of Jan 1, 2020, so just a few months ago, anybody non-UK who is selling into has to now register to collect VAT in the UK. They've got to charge and collect UK VAT at checkout. And marketplaces, of course, are not immune to the impact of Brexit. So we may have some of you out there who this matters to, we may not, but definitely wanted to mention it from the international perspective. Okay, so awesome. You've got the first kind of group of 3 things that you've got to know about sales tax. First of all, rate tables aren't going to get you there. Taxability stretches beyond the item you're selling, and where you sell brings some new challenges between economic nexus, Brexit, overall customs duties, tariffs, things of that nature. So now we're going to move into part 2, our second set of 3 things that you got to know about tax. And we'll cover selling through multiple channels, managing exemptions, and then finally dealing with the necessity of product returns. They happen, maybe even more so now through the e-commerce channel. So starting with selling channels, we've covered this basic understanding of Nexus with physical presence, again, that brick and mortar store, and now with the new additional economic nexus definition due to Wayfair and the impact that has on e-commerce sellers. But there's yet one more twist. As I just mentioned, if you're selling through a marketplace, you've got to be aware of some of those additional rules and processes. The marketplace facilitator rules were kind of a tag along or an add-on, if you will, to Wayfair. So they're relatively new. People are still exploring them and trying to understand them. But essentially, they require that a marketplace facilitator, again, collect and remit sales tax on behalf of you, the third-party seller. So like economic nexus, these laws can differ by state. They're not all the same. So regardless if the marketplace calculates, collects, and remits on your behalf, you as the seller are still responsible to know your total sales and the amount of tax that needs to be remitted, as that typically has to be included in your own periodic tax return. Now, if the only sales you had in the state were through the marketplace and it's established and the volume has established economic nexus, awesome. The marketplace takes care of that for you. But that's typically not the case for most people. So you've got to, again, know what did the marketplace collect and remit on your behalf, and then what do you have an obligation to report on your own tax return. So that consolidation and reconciliation of your data when filing your sales tax returns can really be sometimes a challenging task without the help of technology. Just think about data aggregation and ensuring that everything ticks and ties as you want to make sure that you're filing accurate returns. All right, next, I want to talk about B2b sales. This may be impacting some of you out there. What do you need to know, and what challenges might you face if your customer or the specific purchase they're making is exempt? In short, it's your obligation as the seller to ensure that they have all the necessary supporting documents, including buyer's exemption status, for example, if you as the seller elect not to charge the buyer tax on the purchase. So you got to ask the right questions, you've got to collect the right documents, and have that if you're ever queried by the tax authority in an audit or otherwise. And getting that documentation sometimes can really be cumbersome if it's done manually or after the point of purchase. Here's another clue. Automation is a real help here to ensure that, number one, you're giving your buyers the best possible experience while simultaneously minimizing your risk. And I would encourage you to consider it, certainly given lessons from history. That being right after the 2008 recession, we saw that exemptions, for example, for tax authorities really became a low-hanging fruit for tax authorities to go and get revenue. And those who weren't managing their exemptions correctly faced really significant fines, as unfortunately many of the buyers they sold to as tax exempt went out of business and they didn't have the documentation they needed. And that, of course, leaves the seller on the hook. So again, getting that documentation in timely, understanding the relationship between you and your buyer, the taxability of the product, et cetera, really matters when it comes to accuracy and wanting to avoid any late stage penalties. All right, with the growth of online sales, again, all experienced it. One facet of the customer's experience that sometimes is forgotten is how to handle product returns. So whether purchases are made in store or they're made online, returns must be considered and planned for as kind of as part, I guess, I would say, as part of your end-to-end sales cycle. And, for example, are you going to provide a shipping label for potential returns? Will you pass that cost on to your customers, et cetera? All part of the customer experience. But the ability to process product returns accurately when it comes to tax is essential. And that includes processing and refunding the correct amount, as well as correctly amending your sales tax returns if needed. And if you're oftentimes, not always the case, but sometimes is the case, folks are using one system for sales and another for returns filing and remittance, or they're filing manually, you could be open to some extra headaches, some additional paperwork to ensure that customers are credited back the right amount of sales tax paid, and then that your sales tax returns and remittance filed is accurate. Another awesome opportunity for a sales tax automation solution that can help you verify that it supports that high degree of accuracy, both at the point of purchase and at the point of return. It applies that throughout the process, and that one-stop solution that performs that tax calculation in conjunction with the filing and remittance of your returns, of course, supports that accuracy that you need for both functions, and then nets out with an overall tax compliant solution. All right, so there you have it. As you think about being a tax compliant seller, really those are the 6 things you've got to know about sales tax to ensure that you're being both compliant, and then also to ensure that you're providing your customers the best buying experience out there. So in review, we talked about why simply using rate tables aren't sufficient for most sales. We examined how that taxability stretches beyond just the item you're selling, and then where you sell brings some new challenges between physical nexus, economic nexus, Brexit, customs, duties, tariffs, anywhere you might be selling around the globe. And in that second category of topics, we talked about the impact of selling through marketplaces, managing exemptions, and then of course, last, how do you manage those product returns, because they can often trip people up when it comes to getting tax right on the refund and or adjusting returns that you may have filed if the product returns happen after you filed your tax return. So in short, it is a ton to manage. And then of course you still have your business to run on top of it. I would say that, generally speaking, when I do a look back, 2020 across the board, with all the complexity that it put in front of us, certainly also pushed a fast forward button for many businesses on adoption of automation and technology. And therefore, companies are dealing with digital transformation in every shape and size, across every business of every shape and size. In fact, in this was, I think, maybe June of 2020, we did a study with Avalara, and we questioned a bunch of finance professionals and found out that even at that point, so we're only a couple of months into the pandemic, they were eager to hop on the digital technology transformation train, and responded and said that automation has really helped them navigate the challenges that had been created by the pandemic, and certainly looked to, at the time, ensure that they could remain productive, that they were providing the tools to their employees that they needed to continue to provide services to their customers or products to their customers. And they expressed that they found so much benefit in many of the typical areas that I'm sure you all are familiar with as well, whether that's the customer journey, it's data management, it could be operations and back office management. But I do want to talk for a second about why automation really helps when it comes to tax compliance. And of course, I've led you along this story. I've dropped a few Easter eggs along the way, and pointing out where automation really can help you plug in and make a big difference when it comes to managing the complex nature of tax in general. So let's start by looking really and talking about just the cost of manual compliance. And if I sit back and think about it, honestly, the numbers are truly staggering. On average, small and mid-sized businesses spend 300, I think the number actually is about 302, but let's just call it an even 300 hours annually managing tax compliance, which is equivalent to 2 full months of full-time work. And so for me personally, it's incredible to think that small and mid-sized businesses are spending more than 60 hours annually on tax return prep and filing alone. So the time savings alone, to me, would be enough of a motivator for businesses to automate the tax. But if we take a look a little bit closer at why automation is a good choice for business, I think it will make sense for you. In addition to the time savings, there are, of course, a host of benefits to tax automation, beginning with efficiency. Of course, it not only saves time, but it also helps businesses save money that would otherwise be spent on manual employee hours. The other key benefits, you think about the accuracy, all of that complexity around tax rates, tax rules, do I tax, do I not tax, really drive all answers into providing an accurate solution at the point of sale, and often, again, maybe at the point of refund as well. But as you think about the value chain, then all the way out to the remittance to the tax authorities. Also helps with, of course, customer satisfaction, controlling some risk management, and then also supporting business growth. I briefly touched on that point about businesses that might be growing, providing new services, providing new products. And if you've got an automated solution, it can help you think about, well, again, what is the taxability of the particular product or service that I'm selling, and in the places I'm selling to. So as opposed to having valuable time contributed from your staff to figure all that stuff out, you can leverage automation as a solution to quickly get or enable getting that product to market and not having to think about the tax compliance element of it. If we think about, again, accuracy just a little bit deeper, of course, tax tech leverages a database, right? We've got an enormous database of up-to-date tax rates, tax rules, which are constantly changing. But it means that real-time tax calculations and decisions can be made with confidence on your side. Manual management of tax compliance leaves a huge risk of human error and, of course, operating on outdated information. I know if we go a couple of slides back, there was a number up there about the number of tax authorities just even here in the US alone. And so if you think about 12,000 plus taxing jurisdictions making decisions nearly every day, we do thousands of tax changes every single month. It really is just impossible to keep up with from a manual perspective. But again, if your tax decisions aren't accurate, of course, your business is at risk of decreased customer sat and increased customer penalties. So automating helps the whole experience. If I think about a customer, for example, who is buying online, and that customer is based, I don't know, in North Carolina, but is being, charged Washington state sales tax rates, the experience, of course, for them is really going to be disrupted. And being here in Washington, I can tell you the tax rates are really high. Nobody in North Carolina wants to experience our tax rates. So it would be a problem for a customer. And as I said, getting tax wrong, of course, increases not only customer dissat, but the risk of your business being hit with audits and penalties. So unfortunately, that happens. But here's the deal. Ultimately, the goal for any business, of course, is to grow. And tax compliance can be a major hurdle to that growth if it's not handled correctly. So automation helps businesses free up resources so that those resources can focus on high value projects while at the same time minimizing risk. So as your business might be thinking about how tax compliance automation can be of benefit, we certainly see how things like the Avalara Tax Compliance Suite could be prepared to help. We help across the whole of the compliance process that any business has to go through, from registrations all the way out to the filing and the remittance. It provides an integrated, cloud-based, digital-first solution that easily integrates with most of the systems that perhaps your business is already using. We have over 1,000 signed partner integrations with e-commerce, with ERP and other billing systems, which just basically means for you, you can easily turn on tax compliance management and be on your way to improved compliance, enabling your team to do more than just survive, but actually to thrive. All right, so now you know a little bit more about Avalara. You're an expert in tax at this point, but what don't you know? Well, our relationship with this organization actually formed because we intended to host Crush, this event, live at the Boca Raton Resort. And we did that, of course, pre-COVID. And while that didn't happen as planned, and we were all disappointed, we all really wanted to come to Florida, we are very happy to confirm that our live event is going to be hosted at the Hilton Orlando in both 2022 and 2023, assuming business will resume, we'll be back in person. So that's awesome news. Even better, this year, we didn't want COVID, the pandemic, to stand in our way. We are doing a virtual event because, as I've just explained, we recognize the growing challenges that business face everywhere when it comes to tax complexity. Particularly if you're here in Florida, you're transacting online around the country and the world. That new marketplace legislation that's making its way through the Florida House and Senate, of course, will really change everything and will invite a lot of complexity, unfortunately, potentially into your businesses. So that's why we're hosting Avalara Crush. We want to give you a leg up on how to plan, how to successfully strategize the way that you move forward with your organizations when it comes to tax. And so if you would indulge me, I'm just going to take a few minutes to walk through kind of the highlights of this event. Y'all can determine if this is something that might be beneficial to your business. So first of all, our main show is May 27th, but this event spans over 30 days, giving you access when it works best for you. And in the pre-event, I would invite you, it's a great opportunity to just kind of explore the landscape, bookmark what you might want to dive deeper into. Show day, again, is May 27th. That is definitely a don't miss event. It's where we're going to have all of our signature keynotes, our learning roundtables that will all come to life. And then 30 days post the event, there will be 24/7 access. You get it all, you consume it as you like, whenever you want, go back, rewind, listen to something again, etc. So that'll be available for 30 days post the event, well into basically the end of June. All right, we've got this concept called Crush City. It's a virtual world, basically, for you to just kind of wander, stop, learn, and engage. And you might be wondering, hey, is Crush City the place I want to go visit? Is it going to have information on my industry or my business type? Yes, virtually every industry or business type is really going to be represented there. And of course, they're all subject to tax compliance obligations. So if you have specific interest in a particular industry, maybe also including like accounting practices or small business or enterprise-wide organizations, I believe there is something there for you. So let's cut to the chase. Of course, we're inviting you to join us for May 27th, where we're going to bring together really the world's most foremost thought leaders. And this is a thought leadership event where we come together, we talk about the most important issues happening really in the world of tax to help you manage your business. The first topic we're going to be talking about is winning the regulatory game. Then we'll touch on, how do you get ready and think about marketplaces and multi-channel, which again is virtually touching nearly every business these days. Third, we'll talk about what the digital footprint looks like post-COVID. And then I'm just going to flip through a couple of slides here so that you all can see who really we've got coming to this event and see if it's something that might be interesting for you. So first of all, some top-notch thought leadership. We've got executives of major corporations, including from IDC, a premier analyst firm. We've got the prestigious Tax Policy Center, and we've got world-leading economists from some powerhouse accounting firms, all coming together, one place, one time. And that's all happening really just in the first 120 minutes. Then we've got our main stage keynotes. And after that, a whole level of additional industry keynote speakers kick in and cover trends and implications at an industry-centric level. So I'm sure you all have probably had an opportunity to attend other virtual webinars. We're trying to make it easy for you where you can, again, know what's most important on the day of the 27th, but also find an opportunity to navigate through it through an easy to find Crush City and navigate to content that is most relevant for you. So quick time check. All right, we're doing okay. Again, just on these three themes, just to give you an idea of who is going to be presenting. The first one I mentioned, the winning the regulatory game, really themes there are tax compliance landscape. We're going to talk about some main challenges business face when it comes to being compliant, kind of building on the content that I talked about today. what changes are happening here in the US, what changes are happening in the world, and then a little bit on what options state and local governments have to drive the economic recovery post-COVID. I've got a different slide I didn't present to y'all today, but thinking about how some states actually are doing really, really well, where others are not. And so it's very different, both at the state to state level. And then as you think about within state and locals oftentimes are in very different places. So we'll be honing in and talking about that. On that second major theme of e-commerce and multi-channel, really understanding some major trends about who's actually selling online, how do they do that, deep diving on some macroeconomic trends in consumer behavior and commerce that will impact online businesses, how to reach some larger audiences and streamlining operations through technology, which really might be interesting to this particular audience. What customers should be doing now to ensure that what businesses should be doing now to ensure that they're ready to meet customer expectations. Again, as more of our selling goes online, the customer expectations certainly are changing. And then last, kind of the role that tax compliance management plays in enabling both that customer experience and of course in global commerce. The third keynote is around digital mandates. And again, great group of folks here to talk about that, specifically what challenges were brought on by the pandemic and what have caused businesses to put an emphasis on efficiency and ROI, really deep diving into digital transformation changes that businesses made in the past year and will be making. Some CFO and finance leaders, of course, are playing a huge role in shaping digital transformations for their companies. We'll talk a little bit about why is that happening, how is that happening, and how could you potentially leverage something similar in your own business. And then how finance technology is an area that is absolutely fascinating, and specifically, of course, tax compliance can drive ROI and efficiency into the business. Last, we've got Sanjay Parthasarathi, who is our Chief our Chief Product Officer here at Avalara, is going to talk a little bit about trends and then what do businesses really need and how do we provide solutions for that. So if there are some specific questions that you've had about what technology, how does it help my business, what suite of products does Avalara offer, how can it be integrated into my world as a business, this is really the session to attend in order to better understand that. It wouldn't be an online webinar if we didn't have some entertainment. So certainly we've got some fun things to keep you all entertained. And of course, as I mentioned, we've got Crush City. Just one more quick comment on what you might find right in Crush City. I talked about it really being immersive and industry specific, but it's really thoughtfully curated to get at some of those tough tax questions that you all might have, and then also provide some amazing insights. So there's some tax health tools as you think about, what do I need to know about my business? And am I at a point where potentially, as I think about economic nexus, for example, I might be crossing some thresholds, et cetera. There's a lot of industry reports that are available out there. We're also offering an opportunities for some personal consultation, some assistance on the technology side with Avalara products if you happen to also be an Avalara customer now, or maybe a potential prospect. There's an opportunity to dive in with some of our technology specialists, et cetera. And as I said, anytime also you can kind of close out the day after you've had all of your fun with tax and attend the concert with the Grammy nominated Aloe Black, which will be really fantastic. Most importantly, this is free to you and members of the South Florida Tech Hub. Of course, business peers that you believe would benefit from understanding how to navigate the complexities of tax, please invite them. This will be one of the most important tax events of the year, and we appreciate you all considering attending as well. This is how to get in touch with us. So an 877 number there, and of course our avalara.com page as well. I think in the chat, you all also posted my LinkedIn, so please feel free to hit me up there as well. And with that, I am ready to wrap up and maybe take 4 or 5 minutes of questions if anyone has them.
So thank you so much, Liz. I know you're going over a bunch of stuff there. I know that Don made the comment in chat that this was wonderful. You've got more than enough information in there that I'll connect you guys to through email, but there was a few questions in chat. I was trying to see as you were going, if you were kind of answering them as you went. And I think you answered some of them, but I just wanted to kind of call some of these out here. Let's see. There was one here specifically. Okay, so at Peak asked, in other words, if we do not sell any physical products, but sell services in various states without having any other presence there, except for having customers, should we seek guidance on sales tax on our services?
Yes, please. And here's why. And Nikki, if you wouldn't mind just going on mute while I respond, because I hear a big echo. Thank you. Yes, and the reason why is because twofold. Number one, independent of COVID, there are many states who are seeking tax on digital services or services in general. And again, it varies state to state. It's my favorite answer in tax. It depends, air quote, it depends, where you're selling, to whom you're selling, et cetera. But in general, we are absolutely seeing a trend towards more taxability on services, digital advertising. Maryland just pushed forth the first digital advertising legislation that we've seen this year. Probably going to be a lot of objection and consternation about that particular one. But yes, I would seek counsel on the particular services that you're selling and where you're selling or where you're providing those, just to be sure, because I think, again, states are looking for depth in the taxability that they have today, and then also widening and seeking some breadth in the types of products or services that are actually taxable.
Well, thank you very much, Liz. And we did have another question here from Dawn. What if you offer, whoops, sorry, I just lost it. I'm sorry, I literally just moved my cursor. Oh, what if you offer a satisfaction guarantee to a service allowing for a refund? Is that something that can be automated?
With regard to the tax, absolutely. So I would say nearly anything can be automated, but I'm just biased to think that. I mean, I've been in this business for so many years, and prior to that, in other areas of technology where we think about automation. So my default answer is always going to be yes, and then I have to go prove out how you can do it. But certainly yes, and happy to talk more about that. I think it was Dawn that asked that question, specifically about what your situation is and how automation might be able to help. So please feel free to get in touch.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz. And I actually do have a scheduled email to go out to introduce the two of you, because I saw that in chat. So that'll go out at 1. If there's anybody else that wants a connection, please feel free to drop that in chat. But I do have one other question here for you, Liz, is Peak says, does Avalar provide a service to review sales tax laws in the states that we are in?
We do. And we also, of course, have a wide partner network of specialists that do that as well. So yes, you can seek that through us, and we can do that type of review for you. If you already have somebody in industry that you're using as your tax specialist, of course, they can do that work for you as well. And if you're seeking somebody maybe in your region, if you don't have somebody, again, like I said, we have an extensive network of partners that we work with. I would digress here for just a second as I think about the word partner. Partner at Avalara means a lot of things, and a lot of different pockets. And attending Crush, I think you might see that. So as we think about how to make, for example, connections between where your transactions happen. I mentioned your ERP system, your point of sale system, your bookkeeping system, whatever that is. We have partners that help build those connections into our Avalara system. We have accounting channel partners. We have tax expert partners, et cetera. Sometimes they're all the same, but oftentimes they're not. So broadly stated, Avalara has a huge network of partnerships in and around tax that can help you drive compliance for your business. So happy to help there as well.
All right, very good. I think hopefully I got all the questions that they were in chat. If I missed anybody, please feel free to take yourself off mute. But just as we close up here, I just wanted to say thank you, Liz. It seemed like from the comments in the chat and everything you were going over that this was really comprehensive and a really good presentation. I did want to ask Liz, is there something that you can send, either this slide or a one page or a PDF or something that you can send that we can include in the follow-up email to the guest today?
Oh yeah, happy to do that. Sure.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And even for the people that registered but weren't able to attend, I'll make sure to get that out as well.
Yeah, and Nikki, just one last comment on that. I'm happy to provide this entire deck. So in PDF format, I know there were a couple of chats in there that said, hey, I did a screen grab of this or that. Yeah, I know, number one, tax is complicated. Two, I went over a lot of information. So happy to share this information with your group, again, in PDF format. So you'll have that available to you post this meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you everybody for that came again, as Liz said, a Friday afternoon all about tax. So I know sometimes it's not the most exciting, but it's super important. And it sounds like you guys actually got a lot from it. So I just wanted to say thank you. And again, I did drop the link for the Avalara Crush event in the chat, but I'll make sure to include that in the email also, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's May 27th, right?
Correct. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you,
Hope everybody
everyone.
has a great Friday.
All right. Bye.
Bye.